Super Bowl champions, Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
We had a chance to talk to Doug Pederson this morning, the Eagles head coach. Says the Eagles might look internally to replace Brandon Brooks. And with that news, we bring in Reuben, Frank, and Barrett Brooks. Guys, how you doing?
Good.
Hold on, guys.
This is the Eagle Eye Podcast, and we're going to start there. First with the Eagles' internal options to replace Brandon Brooks. We talked about this on Monday on our emergency podcast. Once we found out the news that Brandon Brooks had ruptured his Achilles and he's out for the season. And I think we have to start with Matt Pryor. We mentioned him a little bit on the previous podcast, but let's take a little deeper dive into him. He's a former 6th-round pick. He has one career NFL start, and he came in a playoff game last year. Barrett, I'm going to start with you. When you look at him, do you think Matt Pryor is a viable option? Can he step in and be the starting right guard this year?
I think he is the option. I think that's the direction that they're going. They like this kid. What he brings to the table is high size and girth. I mean, he's a huge guy, and he's not that really physically imposing as far as, get off and just rip your head off like a Brandon Brooks. But he is a guy that can go in there and get the job done. If you look at him last year when he had that opportunity to get in and play, he played both tackle and guard, so he's versatile. But I really do think that they like this kid good enough that they don't even go outside of the roster and bring anybody in. I think he will be the kid that he put in there and be plug and play. Now, this really does change how they approach the game because, 65% of the run plays and, the pass plays go through you having a dominant right side with Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson. You could slide the protection, and now they were thinking that they were going to be able to help Dillard out with keeping a tight end there or maybe a back there helping protection. Well, now, do they have enough confidence in Matt Pryor being that guy to really hunker down and be a starting right guard? Because he is the guy right now. He's the heir apparent right now.
Yeah, I like the way Matt Pryor played. That was a tough ask to take a guy who really he's never started a game and have him start a game in the postseason. That's a rarity. I remember I looked it up who the last guy to do that was. I don't remember who it was, but that doesn't happen much. I liked his mental approach. I thought, that's a situation that can overwhelm some kids. Here's a young guy, a late round draft pick. He's never really played, and his first start's coming in a postseason game against the Seahawks. I thought mentally he handled it really well, and that's half the battle. And I think physically, I think he's a pretty strong guy. And I talked to one of the Eagle scouts about him this week or in the last 24 hours, and he said, they really like where his strength is. The phrase he uses, he's a people mover, and he's, look, I'm under no illusions that he's going to come in and give the Eagles what they lost in Brandon Brooks. I think Brandon Brooks might be the best right guard in the game. But I think it's a good starting point. They got a guy who's got experience there. The moment's not too big for Matt Pryor. He's got a few months to prepare now with the knowledge that he's going to get the first crack at this. It certainly sounds like it. So, we'll see. There's other options there. None of them are great options. Matt's been around a couple of years. He's a very serious kid. He's a very serious-minded guy, quiet guy, good attitude, good learner. And we'll see what happens. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be the same, but it's a starting point.
I like that you brought up they have a few months here because the timing of this, look, there's never a great time for your Pro Bowl right guard to go down, but for it to happen well before training camp, they're going to have some sort of training camp if this season happens on time or later. Whenever the season happens, there's going to be a training camp. And if they go into that camp saying, Matt Pryor, you're a guy at right guard, you're going to get all the first team reps, that means a lot. I mean, I know that it hurts them to not be able to evaluate some of these younger players during OTAs, but you figure if he gets 4 weeks of snaps as a starting right guard, if he's not ready by then, he's never going to be ready to start. So I think that's a good thing. If you look at their other internal options, is there anyone else who even makes sense? I mean, there's I guess the names that we have to talk about are Nate Herbig, Sua Opeta, and Jack Driscoll, who was the 4th round pick this year. Or what do you think? Are any of those other 3 viable options and even his backups, because right now you look at it, if Sam Allou's a starter and Pryor's a starter, one of those guys is the next man up.
If you look at it, I think Opeda's probably the likely backup. They like him a lot. He was on the practice squad all last year. They kept him around. They like his nastiness and they like his athletic ability. He played right guard at Weber State, so he has some versatility to him. Another name that I say could go out there and really play is Driscoll. I think he's a guy to come in. He's an athlete. I don't think that he is really a necessary tackle. I think he is a guard. He's a short arm guy, so he kind of looks like a guard as opposed to a tackle. I think he can fit in because, if they come in and bring him in as a guard and he learns to be a guard, then he could be a really good guard. He'll be an average tackle, but, you take a guy with average athleticism and put him in at guard, he becomes above average guard. So, he could come in and probably compete also if given an opportunity to really go out there and play at the position.
I'm interested to see with Driscoll if when they brought him in, they listed him as a tackle and they said, well, they'll probably start him at tackle and then we'll move him to guard. I wonder if this changes their mindset a little bit. I wonder if they kind of bring him along at guard first now because of this injury.
It's not like they're super deep at tackle either, but I'll be interested to see if there is a conventional training camp, if they just give Matt Pryor all the reps, or if they work Driscoll in there, if they work Sua Pita in there, or even Nate Herbig, because on the one hand, you want to get Matt Pryor, if he's going to be the guy that starts against the Redskins on opening day, you want to get him as much work as possible.
You're right. Yep.
But also, do you want to see what the other guys have? I mean, if it doesn't work out with Matt Pryor, all right, well, at least we gave Jack Driscoll some reps with the ones along the way. Knowing Stoutland, he would do that. I think Stoutland would give Driscoll, or Sua, whoever it is, just maybe not a ton of reps, but I think they would get some reps with the ones. And I'm sure they'll look at different combinations, whether it's Isaac at right guard, maybe Pryor's more comfortable, whatever. I think they'll look at a lot of different combinations, but I agree with Barrett. I think Matt Pryor has if we're talking internal candidates, I think Pryor's got almost by default, he's got the edge right now.
Yeah,
I like Pryor.
From an experience standpoint, he's been with the offense longer too, and that matters. And as it's only one game, but that playoff game, he held up okay. He wasn't great. He wasn't a Pro Bowler out there, but you figure he had a week to prepare for that game. He's going to have 3 months now, most likely, to prepare to be the starting right guard. But you brought up the external candidates, and there are a few names that we brought up last night. I think the most intriguing one for everyone is Jason Peters. There are some hurdles in the way, and I don't know how likely it is that he's going to come back, but I think it's at least a possibility. Barrett, I want to ask you, as someone who has played tackle and guard in the league, is this a feasible ask for a guy like Jason Peters that after 13 years playing at a Hall of Fame level at left tackle to say, oh yeah, by the way, you're back and you're a right guard?
You know what? Since he's played so long, it'll be an easier transition for him to go to the guard position. I found it easier when I was playing. I had played tackle so long. The only thing, you have to make sure that you stiffen up when you're playing at guard because you have a lot less area that you have to guard. So it's easier than that in that capacity, but it's also harder in the aspect it's the fastest way to the quarterback. So now you have to be stouter. You have to be in there and be more bullish as opposed to being a tackle when you can give a little ground and then attack. At the guard position, you're right there fighting and battling right there. And if you get beat quick, you're right there at the quarterback. So your mentality kind of changes also. I think Jason Peters will be fine there because he understands the severity of how close he is to the quarterback, and he has to be able to initiate power right then and there. And I think his transition into guard will be easier for him because he doesn't have to be that total athlete that he had to be out there when he was at the tackle position. He's not going against guys that he's outweighing that weigh 60 pounds less than he does and are faster than him anyways. He didn't have to go against guys like that. He'll be going against guys that are interior guys that are usually bigger, stronger, but not necessarily faster. So he'll be fine in there if he did do it, but I don't know the likelihood of them bringing him back, though. That would be my only thing. My only premise is if they wanted it's not that they don't want Jason Peters. They want Jason Peters right now, but they just can't afford it. And that's the biggest thing. they can have a guy, Matt Pryor, that can come in and play now. If they were going to bring Jason Peters, I think they'd have done it a long time ago. But I think financially they're strapped for next year that they can't bring this guy in. And he's going to ask for that big money, even knowing he's like, why would I give you guys a discount? It's not my fault that the coronavirus is out there. It's not my fault you're not going to be making that much money. I played well enough that I should have an opportunity to make some money. And I think that's the way he's thinking right now. And, I don't know if he necessarily is going to be able to just from financial situation.
$3.5 million is better than nothing, though.
You're right about that.
Hey, let me ask you, Barrett, about your former teammate Jermaine Mayberry, because he had his troubles at tackle, and he moves into guard and ends up being a Pro Bowler late in his career, which I thought was pretty cool. I think he was drafted the year after you.
Yep. Yep.
What do you remember about his adjustment? Because he went from being a guy who, he got benched at tackle. He just never got comfortable there. But man, he went into guard and he was a natural. He played at a really high level.
Because it's a more physical position, it's like fighting in a phone booth as opposed to being tackle. You're out there and you're in space, and you have to be able to adjust to guys that are faster than you. And Jermaine never was a guy that was fast. He's always been a powerful type of athlete, a powerful type of player. So he was more suited to be in there at guard anyways, because now he can use that powerful stature that he has and the strength that he has and be more aggressive. And that's the biggest thing. You can be more aggressive at the guard position as opposed to tackles. If you're too aggressive at tackle, you can get whipped, or guys are just faster than you or better athletes than you. But at the guard position, it's usually a more physical type of presence right there that you have to fight and initiate contact right then and there, as opposed to going out there and battling in space. When you're a tackle, it's almost like you're a dancing bear. But if you're a guard, it's more like you're a ramming bull. So that bull mentality is something I think Jason Peters has, because Jermaine Mayberry definitely had that type of disposition when he played guard.
The one thing I wonder about JP is, after what's it been, 13 years in the league, in his one stance on the left side, he had brought up the possibility of playing right tackle last year when Lane was down. And I kind of wondered how hard it would be for him to erase that muscle memory when you do something a certain way. I know from a mental standpoint, his long career is helpful because you know exactly what your responsibilities are. But I wonder if it could also be detrimental when you flip sides, because now you're mirroring everything. And like, what do you think about that? Like, just the idea that the muscle memory has to kind of be forgotten.
That'll be the hardest thing. After going 13 years at the left tackle position and then going to the right side, not necessarily the guard position that'll be hard for him, but making that transition from left side to the right side. Your body and muscle memory, it's hard to untrain your body to do that. When they moved me to the right side, as opposed to playing the first 3 years to the left side, when I moved to the right side, my dominant leg changed. You're usually at the point of contact using that dominant leg, and then you bow up right then and there. Well, when you make that transition of going from the left side to the right side, now you change that dynamic in your head. And it's like the polar opposite of what you're used to. So now you're asked to go with your less dominant side, trying to initiate contact. And it's really hard to get your footsteps in your mind to really adjust to that type of change in your set. I think, with the time that he has, that if they were to sign him and get ready, I think he could make that transition. But the more likelihood, if he did come back, they would probably put him at tackle instead of playing him at guard. He would put him in front of Andre Dillard, and they'd still leave Matt Pryor at the right guard position.
All right, guys. So we're like less than 3 months away from opening day. I'm going to put you on the spot. Reuben, I'll start with you. Opening day right guard, who is it?
I'm going to go Matt Pryor. As much as I really want to say Sean Andrews, I'm going to go Matt Pryor. Because it makes the most sense. That's how they like to do things. He's under contract. Ideally they wouldn't want to spend the money. Like Barrett said, they don't have a ton of money, and what they have, I don't think they want to. They ideally want to spend on a veteran, but I also think that there's a chance at some point they may have to bring in a veteran. We'll see, but I think it'll be Pryor.
Now, in your column, was that based on what you would do? You wrote about Jason Peters.
That was based on I need a column. No. Um, yeah. No, I think that I really do think there's some value in it. And there's no doubt in my mind JP could play guard. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. He'd probably be a Pro Bowl guard. Maybe not at this point, but he'd be an effective guard. And it's like when you get older, you go from cornerback to safety. You go to the position that maybe you don't need as much as athleticism, and I think it would suit him well. I don't know how much money he's still looking for at this point, because it's been 3 months and he hasn't signed anywhere. Maybe he's got a number in his mind and he's not going to go below it, and he'd rather not play. But I really do think there's some value in JP. Yeah.
All right, Barrett, I'm putting you on the spot now too. Opening day right guard, who is it?
I'm going to say Matt Pryor also, and that was a perfect analogy that you made, Rube, when you said that the transition from going to cornerback to safety, that's the exact same progression it is when you go from a dominant tackle into guard, because when you get later on in your career, because you're not asked to be that super athlete you have to be at the tackle position. You can be a lesser athlete at the guard position, but you can become more aggressive. We all know JP. I mean, his name is the bodyguard, so he can definitely go out there and mix it up in the interior and be just fine. In fact, you might be right. He could be a Pro Bowl-esque type of guard simply because, I mean, the nature of how he plays the game. I mean, the bodyguard plays aggressive. So he could, really shine at the guard position also. But I just don't know, if they want to go in that direction. I mean, Matt Pryor, it's almost like, if you look at it, you have two holes right now. I think you still have a hole at left tackle because, Andre Dillard. But then now that Brooks is gone, now you have a hole at the right guard position. So who do you feel? If you do bring in JP, I think you stop the bleeding at the left tackle position and then still put Matt Pryor at the right guard position.
Well, I do agree with you both on Matt Pryor. I think that's the most logical solution here. And we'll see what happens. But I think that with a full training camp, 4 or 5 weeks for him to get ready, and it's a pretty appealing situation for a young player. I mean, they're certainly going to miss Brandon Brooks, and you can even argue that he was their best lineman last year. But if it's Matt Pryor, if it's Nate Herbig or Sewell, whoever it is going to be stuck right there between Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson, who might be the best center and right tackle in the league. If you can't get by with Matt Pryor, it's not great. So I think that he'll at least be serviceable in that spot. So I agree with you both.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. They're going to have to bring somebody in. I mean, I would think. If it's a veteran, experienced, cheap, minimum wage type guy who's out of work, who, I mean, they need some kind of experience at guard. I don't know. If they bring someone in, it might not be as a starter, but I don't see how you can go into the season with, Opeta and Pryor and Herbig, and
you were right about
Driscoll.
the tackle position too. You were right about the tackle position too, Rube. I mean, they still don't have a dominant right tackle. I mean, a dominant tackle to back up either side.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I mean, but I guess the question there is how many teams do. It seems like in the last few years they were kind of in a luxury position with a guy like Big V, who worked out to a certain extent. He ended up getting paid, and they drafted 2 offensive linemen this year. So I think there's another thought that's, hey, we're starting kind of a youth movement here. We drafted a guy in the 4th round we think can play maybe all 3 positions, and then you draft Prince in a later round, and you think there's a lot of upside there if his knee checks out. You think that he has starter potential down the line. You still have Jordan Mailata. This is year 3. I mean, we got to start seeing that. I mean, if he can't play yet, at a certain point, like where is this leading? There's a lot of potential, and I get that maybe he's not ready to be a starter, but if in year 3 you're still not ready to put him on a football field, where's it going? So I think there's 2 ways to think about this. One is, you're right, Rube, they don't have a lot of depth right now. The other is Well, you drafted these guys. You have young players. Maybe it's time to kind of ride with them and really see what you have.
Hey, your NBC Sports Philadelphia podcasts are all now on the My Teams app. Listen to Eagle Eye, Sixers Talk, Phillies Talk, and Flyers Talk now on the My Teams app.
Guys, every time we talk to someone from the Eagles in an official capacity, it seems like Alshon Jeffrey gets talked up more and more. I mean, every time we talk to Howie or Doug, and on Tuesday morning when we talked to Doug Pederson, more praise, not praise for Alshon, but more signs that he's going to be a big part of this team in 2020 once he gets on the field. Rube, you had a chance to write about that. What did you make of Doug's comments?
Yeah, and he's been pretty consistent. And it's almost like each time we talk to him, he gets stronger and stronger. I mean, he said he's going to be a big part of our offense. Alshon Jeffrey. On the one hand, you think, all right, maybe they're posturing. They're trying to talk him up so they can trade him. But let's be honest. I mean, how are you going to trade a guy with that kind of salary and that foot injury? He's untradeable. So it makes sense that they're going to try to get everything or anything they can out of him once he does get healthy. Well, they certainly don't have a lot of experience at wide receiver. We know that. So a healthy Alshon, he's okay. He's an okay player. They put themselves in this position by guaranteeing his contract that, they really kind of have to play him. I mean, if he's here, and the only reason you cut him and take that salary cap hit is if you think he's just the worst person on earth and he shouldn't be around Carson. You don't want him in the locker room. Heck, he might be in a different locker room than Carson anyway. I mean, he might be at the Link and Carson at the NovaCare. Who knows?
Alshon's going to have his own locker room over there at the Link.
And I put him at the Palestra or something. But if you don't feel like, like he's a bad influence on your young receivers, and I mean, Doug talks every time about, I love the way he's, interacting with our young receivers. Then why not? Why not try to talk him up, get him confident, get him thinking, hey, maybe they want me here. Maybe, maybe I can help. I think it's the only way you can proceed. So I don't read too much into it just because they have no choice but to try to get anything they can out of Alshon because they're paying him anyway. But Doug's been pretty effusive about him. He goes out of his way to talk about his leadership and his communication in Zoom sessions with the other receivers. And, today he said, I don't know exactly if we should take this literally, but he talked about he might miss a couple games. If you can get Alshon by week 5 and he's, he averages 4 catches for 55 yards a game, that's more than you're getting from Nelly or Matt Collins or JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Matt graded out great.
Yeah, he did. So I don't know. I still find it hard to believe we could actually see a productive Alshon Jeffrey again in an Eagles uniform. But, as each week goes by, it looks more likely he's going to be here. And it sounds like his rehab's going well. Healthy Alshon, got to pay him anyway. See what you can get out of him.
I told you guys before, I've been screaming this since, the end of training camp. I really think that this guy's going to be here, and I thought he was going to be a very productive player. I mean, Alshon, I always reference back to the last game, Miami game. You guys get at me every time I say this, but I mean, he does have the productivity to do it. I mean, he's great size if he's healthy, and that's a huge if. I really think that he's a guy to keep this chains moving. He's not going to be a dynamic guy, going to have 100 yards a game, but he can give some consistency, especially when you have the Blazers that they have right now. Marquise Goodwin is a guy that can run. D. Jackson is a guy that can run. Jalen Reagor is a guy that can run. Now they have guys to work the middle of the field with the 2 tight ends, and you can almost say that Alshon will be a tight end X type of receiver. He's going to be a chain mover. He's going to be the guy that's going to go out there and give you consistent offense and moving the chains. And that's all they're going to need from him. They have explosive guys. He can be that guy roaming around in the middle of the field that everybody forgets. They're not going to forget about those guys that can run. They're not going to forget about Zach Ertz. But they will forget about Alshon in that offense, which will allow him to go out there and make some big plays simply because, he's a bigger type of player. And they're going to try to put guys that are not exactly defensive threats on him. And he can muscle those guys out. So I see him as a guy to just go out there and just play a simple game of catch, with Carson and move the chains.
They might use a defensive tackle to cover Alshon Barrett.
Oh, zone blitz,
Yeah, that's right.
Drop him in the zone blitz. It's interesting because with Alshon, I think you're right, Reuben, that they might as well see what they can get out of him. They're stuck with him. I mean, I also believe that they probably did try to trade him.
Yeah.
You know, he's
How
an
you gonna
aging.
trade him?
Well, I don't think they are going to be able to, but I bet you they tried.
No, I'm sure they did, but I mean,
Yeah.
we got an injured guy with a foot, who can't walk, who's coming off the worst season of his career, who doesn't like the quarterback, who's got a guaranteed $10 million contract. You want him? I'm sure.
Well, yeah,
those
that's my
conversations.
point. Was that you're not going to be able to trade that guy, and I think that when you're in that situation, you're left with the options: either you keep him or you cut him. And if you cut him, well, then you've wasted that money. At least if you keep him around, you see if he gets healthy, you see if you can put him on the field, and if he can help you. I'm concerned about the injury. It's a list frank for a player who already started to show signs of decline physically. So is he going to really be effective? I don't know. Doug mentioned a couple games. I think there's still a chance he ends up on the PUP to start the season, which means you're going to miss him for at least 6 games. We'll have to find out once training camp comes what he's able to do. And
Plus,
there's
we don't
no
know.
timetable yet.
The season might start in October. It might be a 12 game. There's just so many unknowns. I mean, we're kind of operating under the assumption when we talk about these things that the season's going to start September 13. They're going to play 16 games. Personally, I don't see how that's possible right now. We'll see what happens, but if it's a shorter season and it starts later, maybe Alshon, will have a chance to be ready when the season does start. I just don't know.
Well, let me ask you too. I'm gonna ask both of you guys this: is it more so his injury, or is it more so his locker room presence? I mean, you guys are thinking he's the snitch that talked and said those things about everybody in the locker room. What aspect of the game that you guys don't like about Alshon?
I love the word snitch. That brings me back to like sixth grade playground days. He's a snitch. I think it's more the injury that scares me. Even if you put all the locker room stuff aside, and the Eagles have tried to downplay that as much as possible in every setting they get. He was already showing signs of decline. The production was down. He wasn't physically the same player he was. So then you add a list frank on top of that. I don't know. I don't know what he has left physically, but they have no choice but to figure it out.
Isn't a snitch the thing that they use when you play Quidditch?
Yeah, if you catch the snitch, you win the game, right?
Yeah.
That's the one that flies?
Yeah.
I never understood Quidditch because this is off a tangent here, but like if the snitch is flying around, why doesn't everyone just watch that guy? Like, why are we doing all the rest of it if that's the only thing that really matters in the end? It always seems like someone catches a snitch. Why are we going for the big ball through the hoop thing?
It's not a ball. It's a snitch. But
no, the bigger balls.
Oh, the ball through the. So why are you trying to score if you can just win the game by catching the snitch?
You get the snitch, but the seeker has to get the snitch. But if you have the best seeker, that's like a quarterback on steroids, right? Like that's the most important part of any Quidditch team.
Yeah.
Malfoy.
Start? Remember when Malfoy became the seeker? Remember that episode? I think it was Phantom Menace. No, that's. But anyway,
signals crossed there.
No, you're. It's a fair point. I remember walking down Walnut Street by Penn, and there's a big field down there by like 32nd Street, and they were playing. The Penn kids were playing Quidditch, and I just
flying at Penn. I know those kids are smart, but I didn't know they figured that out.
They weren't literally flying, but they were playing a facsimile of Quidditch. Apparently,
they have brooms.
They had kind of broomish brooms, but they weren't really flying. But yeah, they were playing Quidditch.
Was it Slytherin?
Who knows? If baseball doesn't come back and play, Jim Salisbury and Corey Simon might be covering Quidditch. They might be covering like Penn Drexel.
I might pitch
Quidditch.
that.
I think you should. Anyway, Yeah, my concern with Alshon is the same. I think the other stuff you can work around. Um, I don't think Alshon's a bad guy. I think he's a very quiet guy. I think he's, for the most part, he's been professional since he's been here. I just worry about his legs and his ability to run and get open. I mean, he's always been a guy who can kind of sky and get the ball up high and use his wingspan. Um, Maybe he can do that, but if your legs aren't there, I don't know if, I mean, how can you elevate if you're coming off a bad foot injury? So my concerns are physical. He's 30, but I mean, he hasn't had a big season since, gosh, like 2014 in Chicago. I mean, he hasn't had more than 847 yards since 2014. I mean, this is an average player right now. So he's had 300-yard games in 44 games as an Eagle. So, we'll see. I'm optimistic that maybe he can get on the field, but I'm pessimistic that he can be a truly impactful player at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's fair based on the body of work we've seen and the injury and all that. One player that there is a lot of excitement around is Jalen Reagor, the first-round pick, 21st overall. Doug Pederson said something interesting on his call Tuesday morning that Jalen Reagor right now is going to come in learning one position, and he'll learn behind DeSean Jackson. So that means he'll be the Z receiver for this Eagles offense. It's not necessarily surprising, but it is an important development to note, because it might mean that he's not a starter at the beginning of the season, and DeSean Jackson might block his way to the field. What do you guys make of this news?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I don't think you should be giving a guy, any rookie, in a season without OTAs, without mini camps, without face-to-face contact with your coaches. I wouldn't give a guy more than one position, and give him one position and let him learn it the best he can. Just focus on that, not try to learn the X and the Y. Just focus on the Z, learn those plays, get comfortable with the way the ball's coming to you. Throw them with Carson wherever you are, and just try to be the best Z you can be. And then when you get a comfort level with that, if that happens, you want to give the guy more, that's fine at some point. But I think you can overwhelm a kid, even a really smart kid, a really bright kid. This offense is not a simple one, and we've seen that, how thick that playbook is. I mean, it's an iPad, but it's a thick iPad. No, it is. There's a lot to take in. So I think you're better off at this point, especially this summer. Get the guy comfortable in one spot, and then when he masters that, you can move on.
Absolutely. I think the same thing, Rube. I mean, you just don't have an off season in which you can go in and implement him, and he'll be overwhelmed simply because he didn't have OTAs. He didn't have the mandatory mini camps. So he goes in there and you just throw the whole playbook at him. I mean, what does he do? I mean, he won't be able to grasp the whole situation. I mean, it's going to be hard for Goodwin to come in and really master at his position. So to ask a guy to do that, it's just crazy. You just can't do it. You really can't do it. But I mean, if you look at the situation, understanding what's going on with everybody as far as not being there, not learning the offense, not being able to learn the defense, it's really just going to be hard to have all these guys going in and being able to be the best of their level going into the season. It's just going to be too hard. So Jalen's a guy. They're going to, as good as he's going to be behind D-Jax, learn the position, and then sprinkle in some gadget plays here and there. Maybe tunnel screens. Maybe you can give him some reverses, some jet sweeps. Those are the type of plays I think he can become good at and run the offense.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Barrett, because it's at one level, yes, him being technically behind DeSean Jackson on the depth chart means he won't start games as long as DeSean's healthy, but they have to find opportunities to get him involved, and he's the type of player you can do that with. I mean, you can find ways. Like I think they should utilize him on a bunch of bubble screens and end arounds and those types of plays. So, I think there are ways to bring him along slowly, but also get him involved early. And I think there's a balance there. We can kind of look back to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside last year. you guys remember, a big reason the Eagles cited last season early on that he wasn't getting playing time was because he was the backup X receiver behind Alshon, and Alshon was playing. But with JJ, he didn't have the ability to do a lot of other things. He's kind of not that he can't play other positions, but I think Reagor is a much more versatile player. He was very versatile at TCU. I think he can play inside, outside. I think he can line up at the X at times. I think he can be kind of the more explosive option as a slot receiver to kind of give some balance to Greg Ward. So ultimately, I like his versatility, but you got to be careful. You can't overwhelm him early. We've seen that before. A kid will get overwhelmed, and it's really tough for him to recover. So I hate to use the term kid gloves, but in this case, that might be the best way to handle it.
Absolutely.
And I think you want a young guy to be confident. And I think when you're like you just said, we've seen young guys get overwhelmed. When you're overwhelmed, you're not going to be confident. You're not going to be able to go out there and let your abilities come out. And so you try to get a guy in the, feeling good about himself, feeling like he really knows what he's doing at that one position, and get him confident, get him ready, get him prepared, and get the most out of him.
Now, the one question I do have, though, with all this is, so if you have DeSean as your Z, and you have Jalen Reagor backing him up, and we kind of think Greg Ward's a slot, I think Marquise Goodwin kind of fits the Z too, as that speedy deep threat type player. The bigger body X receivers are Alshon Jeffrey and JJ Arcega-Whiteside. So we've already talked about the possibility that Alshon isn't ready for the start of the season. So are we talking about starting J-Jaw over Jalen Reagor because of positions?
Well, you're forgetting forgetting Robert Davis, Deontay Burnett.
They still run a lot of 12 personnel also, so I think that's going to be a major part of their offense. So, I don't necessarily see that, type of receiver being in there simply because, they love Dallas Goedert, and we all know they love Zach Ertz.
That's true. And the 12, you're right. 12 will still be a big part of it. I think, look, they love 12 personnel. They have two great tight ends. But a part of the reason they used that so much last year, at least in my opinion, was because the receiver position was pretty weak. So the idea that, well, now you have some more talent there, you have some more speed. You didn't bring all this speed in to still be a plodding offense. And just by design, that's kind of what you're going to be if you're in 12, for the most part, more so than if you're in 11 with track stars.
Yeah, I think you'll see. I think you'll see times where DeSean and Reagor line up. I think you'll see that. And I think they want Goddard on the field a lot. I think they look at Goddard like they look at Ertz and Goddard as 1 and 1A or 1A and 1B or whatever it is. Goddard's a weapon, man. I mean, he's got to be on the field. I mean, that guy. What did he catch? The second half of last year, he only had a few catches fewer than Zach. I mean, he's got the ability to catch 80 balls. I don't know if he'll have the, if the ball come to him that much, but
he might need to stay in and block too.
Yeah. Yeah, Ertz doesn't have to worry about that. I'm just kidding. I think no. Ben, can you just delete that? No. Yeah, I think they want both those guys on the field a lot. I think you're going to see a lot of that, and I think it makes sense. I mean, you still have the outside speed, and that middle of the field is going to be wide open.
Absolutely. I mean, and it makes a lot of sense, considering the fact also that they have some potency at the running back position. A guy is a game breaker, which allows you to then run the ball when you want to with this 12 personnel. But then they can also have two guys that can really go catch it and be very versatile, not just in the middle of the field, but you line those guys up outside and they could still go out there and kind of Debo smaller DBs simply because they can catch also. So it's just to me, it's, I know you said plotting, Dave, but I think, with that offense, they kind of think of it as their all-purpose offense, so they can move the ball simply because you can't defend, every part of the field with those two guys on the field.
That's a good discussion, guys. I want to bring up training camp. and what it might look like, because Doug Pederson was asked about it, and he specifically brought up the idea that, and this to me makes a ton of sense, they have Lincoln Financial Field too. I'm not sure how exactly this is going to look. What are your thoughts? Do you think what's training camp going to look like?
Well, at least at the link, you have 2 locker rooms. So,
More if they can get in the Temple locker rooms too.
Yeah. So that's not an issue. You can spread guys out more. The logistics are going to be really hard. Honestly, we talked about what Harbaugh said the other day. It's going to be almost impossible to follow these guidelines to the T. I don't know how you do it. And how do you keep guys 6 feet apart and then go do goal line?
Right.
I don't understand. You can't be within 6 feet of a guy, and then next thing you know, you're playing football out there. So I don't know. The link certainly gives you a lot more room than you have at the NovaCare to spread guys out to different entrances, different places to get dressed or change. But then again, you have all your, you have some medical facilities there, but you have everything at the NovaCare.
And aren't you going to bus them there? That's another problem too. If you're going to bus guys over, how many buses are you going to need?
Excuse me. Unless you have guys drive over there.
Maybe.
That's 90 guys. 90 guys in a locker room is just going to be too tough for you to really think that you can keep this social distancing together. And then, it's not just that. I think, once they leave that place, 6 degrees of separation, it's just going to be too tough. Once guys leave, they can't monitor where those guys are. So they can't monitor until they get back to the stadium or wherever they're going to be at. So it's just going to be really, really hard, So I don't know. And then we're not even talking about the fact, where do we fit in? How do we fit in as far as being able to cover this team?
I don't think we do, Barrett. I think if anything, they'll let us buy a drone and fly it over practice one day.
No, but it's true. It's the only thing. If you put up the team in a hotel like they got the Marriott down in the Navy Yard, and have guys isolate from the end of practice to the beginning of the next practice. But you got guys with kids. They're not going to see their kids for 4 months. You got guys with families. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it. I can't imagine having a fall without football, but I just don't know how you can do it without having testing. And they take people's temperatures, but what does that do? All that means is that you don't have symptoms now, but you can still be carrying it.
Yep.
You could still be giving it to other people before you have a temperature. It's just, so unless they come up with, more sophisticated testing in the next couple months, I don't know how they're going to have training camp. I don't know how they're going to do it. But, this thing, they're learning more every day, and there's a lot of people working on this. And, I just hope for the best, because I cannot imagine a fall without football. I'm sitting down here watching Korean baseball and watching a tennis tournament in France over the weekend.
Rube hasn't left his house in 5 months. Just
because I'm desperate. I'm so desperate for sports. I don't care about Korean baseball, but at least it's sports. It's something. I saw Aaron Altair go yard the other day.
All right, I like that.
That was big for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy, but you're right.
Yeah, I can't imagine not having it, but I don't know how they're going to do it.
Well, that little bit of optimism is going to wrap us up on this Eagle Eye podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor. Please go rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For Barrett and Rube, I'm Dave. We will catch you guys next time.